Namaskar and welcome to Chat with Rohan, episode 3, in conversation with Dr. Bibek Debroy, Chairman of the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister and one of my idols. A very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, always a pleasure to talk to you.
We're sitting today in this beautiful lawn in Lutyens, Delhi. But what a lot of people may not know about your journey is that at a very young age, you were familiar with pain and suffering. Your family saw the partition and you did not have what one would call the easiest childhood years.
I grew up in Shillong. I spent the first 10 years of my life in Shillong. My family was uprooted in the course of the partition. My ancestral home is today in what is now Bangladesh. So in 1948, several months after the actual partition, my grandfather sort of walked across, and that's how I grew up in Shillong. Difficult childhood, obviously it was much more traumatic for my grandfather. It was much more traumatic for my father. Certain things one would look at as being difficult. At that particular point in time, I did not perceive them as hardships. Examples of that: we did not have tap water. Water used to come from a well. We do not have toilets in the current sense. It used to be what is called one of those pit latrines. We did not have electricity. Everything had to be done with the light of a lantern. I used to walk to school, which is a distance of about 7 kilometers. In hindsight, many people would define them as deprivation. At that time, I did not feel particularly deprived. It was just part of life. My life changed at the age of 10. It changed at the age of 10 because of two reasons. My father got a promotion, so he was promoted to the Indian Audit and Account Service. Our lives changed because of that. And the second thing that happened is that I got a Government of India scholarship. So the Government of India scholarship changed my life. Do I believe education can change lives? Yes, I do, because I can see that happening in my life, and my life would not have been what it is today had I not had the access to education. So in that sense, yes, I do believe that the social sectors, education and health, are particularly sectors where there's need for government intervention.
What is your vision for a new India that universal access to education and good healthcare for all will create?
One needs to have an India that is a prosperous India, that is a more developed India, and one can see the signs of that happening. Question, of course, is how do we define that development, how do we define that progress, and what is the timeline for that? So one possible way of defining it, the traditional way that economists always do that, is what percentage rate of growth, and that rate of growth always translates into a per capita income. So we also need to look at what kind of human development we achieve in the process. In the process of doing this, we need to have more efficient labor markets, we need to have more efficient land markets, we need to have more efficient capital markets, and we need to have productivity.
What many people may not know about you is that in addition to being a prolific author, authored no less than 100 books, you are also a voracious reader. You write in your book Making of a New India, and you have always been a champion of participatory democracy at the last mile in India. What is the role that Jan Shakti and Jan Bhagidari are playing in the making of a new India?
There are certain things we expect government to do. And when we say government, there are three layers of government. People think of government and people immediately think of union government, and within that people immediately think of the executive arm of union government. But in government as defined by the Constitution, there are three different organs of state. There is the executive, there is the legislature, and there is the judiciary. Similarly, there are three layers of government. There is union government, there is state government, and there is local government. Local government has led to a tremendous sense of empowerment, at least in a social sense. The 75th Independence Day speech from Red Fort, the Prime Minister used the expression Sabka Prayas. And the constitution also begins, the preamble also begins with the expression we the people. So India will not become a better governed country only because of what government does. It will become a better governed country because of what we as citizens do, the sabka prayas part of it. And therefore, indeed, it is in the interests of individuals to make India a better economy and a better society. India is a very, very heterogeneous country, spatially. We get a sense of that when we look at the states, and SKOCH Foundation has been in the business of ranking states on different parameters, but states are administrative boundaries. Deprivation and development do not necessarily respect administrative boundaries. So in purely relative terms, there are parts of India that are still disadvantaged and deprived. And since May 2014, a lot has been done by the present government, and I am using the two terms as synonymous, the two terms of the government as synonymous, to provide basic necessities. We must realize that if I use purchasing power parity and to convert per capita income, a place like Chandigarh has a PPP per capita income that is like that in Europe. But there are parts of India that have PPP per capita incomes that are in the category of what are known as LDCs. So the vision that all of us should have for India is an integration of these parts of India into the trajectory of growth and development.
What is your vision for a globally competitive India? With the world moving towards digital technologies, how do you see the dream of $1 trillion digital economy coming to life?
Competition has many different sources. It depends on levels of development. At some point in the future, beyond 2035, India is also going to become old. This so-called demographic dividend is not going to last forever. At different levels of development, as they move up the ladder, different countries tap different sectors for their competitive advantage. All said and done, as of today, we are still a relatively more labor abundant economy, which logically means that the price of labor in relative terms will be cheaper than the price of capital and technology. So I am not talking about niches, forget the niches, but otherwise in the next 15 odd years, the primary source of competitiveness for India, regardless of the state, will be in terms of its ability to make efficient usage of the resource that we have in plenty, which is labor. As we move up the ladder, then the focus shifts to technology and competitiveness.
What do you see as the incremental policy changes that would help India achieve this dream?
Incremental policy changes by who? And this also comes back to the question of what do we expect government to do. The social sectors are by and large the province of the states. Health is entirely a state subject. Education, a large part of it is actually a state subject. But I would like to see greater attention to the legal system and its inability to deliver efficiently, a greater attention to the legislative system, because these after all are part of the framework on which all of our policies rest. These are based on the Constitution.
Thank you very much for taking the time to spend this morning with us on Chat with Rohan. It's been an honor and a privilege to speak to you this morning, as I'm sure it has for several other young Indians. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Rohan.